3 weeks ago, nobody was talking about Morgan Rogers as a World Cup hero. He came on as a substitute. He started one match. He gave England energy that nobody expected. He helped England reach a World Cup semi-final for the first time in 36 years. And then Chelsea paid £117 million for him. £117 million for a 23-year-old who was at Middlesbrough 2 years ago, for a player who cost Aston Villa £15 million in February 2024. For a player who most of the football world learned existed only 6 weeks ago when Thomas Tuchel started him in a World Cup semi-final against Argentina. The most expensive British player in the history of football, ever. Beating Elliot Anderson's £116 million move to Manchester City by just £1 million. Both deals happening in the same summer. Both players every single second of it. Welcome back to Robert's Football Talk. I am your host, and if you are new here, subscribe right now, because today we are breaking down the Morgan Rogers to Chelsea deal that has shocked the entire football world. Where he came from, what Chelsea are actually buying, why Arsenal tried to get him and failed, why this is either the smartest piece of business Chelsea have done in years or the most expensive gamble in Premier League history. And the question every football fan is asking this morning: is Morgan Rogers worth £117 million? Subscribe now, let us go. Part 1. From Middlesbrough to the World Cup semi-final to Stamford Bridge. The journey nobody predicted. Let me take you through this journey because the speed of it is simply extraordinary. February 2024. Aston Villa pay £15 million to sign Morgan Rogers from Middlesbrough, a championship player, 21 years old. For some good performances in the second division, potential, raw, unproven at the top level. Fast forward 18 months. Rogers is starting in a World Cup semi-final for England against Argentina at MetLife Stadium in front of 80,000 people against the defending world champions, against Messi. And he is brilliant, direct, energetic, giving Argentina's left side problems they have not faced all tournament. He is involved in passages of play that put England in control for long stretches. He is exactly what Tuchel said he would be when he made the most surprising team selection of the tournament. Arsenal had already identified Rogers as their top transfer target this summer. They wanted him. They tracked him all season. They watched him grow from a championship player to a Premier League standout to a World Cup contributor, and they decided he was the player they needed. And then Chelsea came in with £117 million, and Arsenal could not match it. The Gunners were unwilling to meet the fee. Arsenal, who have the budget for major signings. Arsenal, who are the defending Premier League champions. Arsenal, who have been spending seriously for 3 consecutive summers. Even they looked at £117 million for Morgan Rogers and said, that is too much. Chelsea looked at the same number and said, done. Now I want to ask you something. Is £117 million the right price for Morgan Rogers right now? Or is Chelsea paying a World Cup premium that is going to look embarrassing in 2 years' time? Drop your honest answer in the comments right now. Subscribe to Robert's Football Talk right now. Share this video, because part 2 is where the real debate lives. Part 2. What Chelsea are actually buying. The Rogers profile. Let me tell you what Morgan Rogers actually does on a football pitch. Because the casual fan who watched him at the World Cup for 3 matches needs to understand the full picture before we debate the price tag. Rogers is not a winger in the traditional sense. He is not someone who hugs the touchline and puts crosses in. He is an attacking midfielder who can play across the front 3. He plays between the lines. He receives the ball in tight spaces and turns. He carries the ball forward. He presses intensely without the ball. He is a high-energy disruptor who makes opposition defenses uncomfortable. At Aston Villa this season, he had 7 goals and 4 assists in the Premier League. For a 23-year-old in a Villa team that was inconsistent for much of the campaign, that is a solid return. Not spectacular, solid. The numbers of a good player, not yet a great one. But here is what the numbers do not capture about Rogers. His impact on the tempo of a match. The way he makes transitions happen faster. The way his pressing triggers turnovers that create chances. These are the things that show up on advanced metrics and in the eyes of coaches who watch him every week, rather than in the simple goal and assist column. Tuchel trusted him enough to start him in a World Cup semi-final over Bukayo Saka, over Marcus Rashford, over established international players with far more caps and far more experience. That decision tells you everything about how the coaching staff see Rodgers when they watch him every day in training. Chelsea are buying that. The energy, the pressing, the ability to play multiple positions across the front line, the World Cup pedigree that now exists, and the belief that at 23 he has not yet reached anywhere close to his ceiling. The 7-year contract he has signed tells you how Chelsea see his long-term future. This is not a squad filler. This is not cover for injuries. This is Chelsea saying Morgan Rodgers is a cornerstone of what we are building for the next decade. Part 3. The record that puts everything in context, and the comparison nobody wants to make. Morgan Rodgers to Chelsea. £117 million. Most expensive British player ever. Let me put that in context, because the historical comparison is important. The previous record for a British player was Jack Grealish to Manchester City in 2021 for £100 million. Grealish at the time was 25 years old, had just been one of the best players in the Premier League at Aston Villa, had a strong record of consistent performances at the top of the game, went to City, and had a difficult first few seasons trying to fit into Pep Guardiola's system before eventually becoming a valuable squad player rather than the superstar the fee implied. Rodgers at Chelsea. £117 million. At 23, with one genuinely strong Premier League season at Villa, 3 World Cup appearances including 1 start, and no European football in his next club season because Chelsea are not in Europe after finishing outside the top 5 last season. Chelsea have paid more than was ever paid for Jack Grealish, for a player who is 2 years younger, with a fraction of Grealish's Premier League track record, and they are asking him to justify that fee without the pressure and the stage that Champions League football provides. Aston called it high risk. They wrote specifically that Rodgers' move to Chelsea is high risk in a way that Elliot Anderson's £116 million move to Manchester City is not, because Anderson goes to a Champions League club, to Pep Guardiola, into a system that has been producing elite performances for a decade. Rodgers goes to Chelsea under Xabi Alonso, a new manager, a rebuilding project, no European football. The context matters enormously when you assess whether this deal works. Subscribe to Robert's Football Talk right now and share this video because the Xabi Alonso angle changes everything about this transfer. Part 4. Xabi Alonso at Chelsea. The reason this deal might actually be genius. Here is the part of this transfer story that the price tag is distracting everyone from. Chelsea hired Xabi Alonso as their new manager this summer. The same Xabi Alonso who won the Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen unbeaten. The same Xabi Alonso who turned Leverkusen from a mid-table club into German champions in 2 seasons. The same Xabi Alonso that Real Madrid wanted before Mourinho came back. The same Xabi Alonso that Liverpool wanted, that Bayern Munich wanted, that every top club in Europe was pursuing. Chelsea got him, and Alonso has now been given the transfer budget to build his squad from scratch. Rodgers at £117 million. Whatever else is coming through the door this summer. Alonso's Chelsea is not the chaotic rebuilding project the club has been for the last 4 years. It is a serious attempt to build something under one of the most exciting young managers in football. And Rodgers fits that. Alonso's Leverkusen were built on high-energy pressing, quick transitions, and technically capable players who could execute a system that demanded intelligence and intensity simultaneously. Rodgers has exactly those qualities. The pressing, the energy, the ability to receive the ball in tight spaces and make something happen. Alonso knows what he wants. He knows the profile he needs. And he has decided Morgan Rodgers is that profile. When a manager of Alonso's quality decides a player is exactly what his system needs, and a club backs that decision with £117 million, the smart money is not on laughing at the fee. The smart money is on wondering whether Alonso sees something in Rodgers that the rest of us are still catching up on. Part 5. The Arsenal failure. What it means for the Gunners. Let me say something that Arsenal fans need to hear this morning. Arsenal identified Rodgers as their top transfer target. Their top target. The player they most wanted this summer. The player their new sporting director Andrea Berta had earmarked as the signing that would make Arsenal even better after back-to-back Premier League title defenses. And Chelsea beat them to it. Not because Arsenal did not want Rodgers badly enough. Not because Arsenal lack ambition. But because Chelsea offered £117 million and Arsenal decided the price was too high. Here is the problem with that decision. Arsenal needed a wide forward. Rodgers was their answer to that need. They could not get him. So now they need to find a different answer to a problem that still exists. Fabrizio Romano has confirmed Arsenal will look at other options, but the player they identified as their first choice is now at Stamford Bridge on a 7-year deal. This is the second consecutive summer that a direct rival has beaten Arsenal to a priority target in a bidding situation. Each time it happens, the gap between what Arsenal want to build and what they actually build becomes the story. Champions on the pitch, second best in the transfer market. That cannot continue indefinitely if Arsenal want to remain Premier League champions. Part 6. The verdict. Is Morgan Rodgers worth £117 million? Here is my honest verdict. Right now today, in July 2026, Morgan Rodgers is not worth £117 million, based purely on what he has produced so far in his career. That is the honest truth. 7 goals and 4 assists in a Premier League season at Villa and 3 World Cup appearances do not justify being the most expensive British player in history. But here is the thing about transfer fees at this level. You are not paying for what a player has done. You are paying for what they are going to do. You are paying for trajectory, for potential, for the belief that the 23-year-old in front of you becomes a 27-year-old who justifies every penny of the fee and then some. Rodgers at Chelsea under Xabi Alonso, with a 7-year commitment and the confidence of being the club's most expensive ever signing, has every structural condition for success. Good manager, clear role, long-term commitment, no pressure of European football in year 1 to overwhelm a player still developers. If Alonso's Chelsea are competing for the Premier League title with Rodgers as one of their key players, this deal looks smart. If Rodgers stagnates, if the Alonso project does not deliver, if Chelsea are still outside the top 4 in 3 years, then £117 million for Morgan Rodgers from Middlesbrough will be the transfer that defines everything wrong with modern football economics. One of those 2 stories is going to be written, and we will not know which one for at least 2 or 3 seasons. What we know right now is that Chelsea have signed the most expensive British player in history, a 23-year-old who helped England reach a World Cup semi-final, a player Arsenal wanted and could not get, and a player Xabi Alonso specifically chose as a cornerstone of his project. That is either genius or madness. And in football, those 2 things are often the same decision viewed from different distances. That is the full breakdown. Rodgers to Chelsea confirmed. £117 million. Most expensive British player ever. Arsenal hijack failed. Alonso's vision. The risk and the potential explained. 3 questions in the comments right now. First, is Morgan Rodgers worth £117 million? Yes or no? Second, does Rodgers become a genuinely elite player under Alonso at Chelsea, or does this go the way of Grealish at City? Third, is Arsenal failing to match Chelsea's bid a mistake they will regret next season? Drop everything below. I read every single one. This has been Robert's Football Talk. Hit that like button, share this video with every football fan you know, subscribe if you are not already here. New videos every single week. I will see you in the next one.